Welcome, everybody. We are excited to have you here today for how to 10x your content using AI. My name is Darrell Evans. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a digital marketing agency in Las Vegas, Nevada called Yokel Local Internet Marketing, as well as the founder of the Mindshift Business Academy and host of the Mindshift podcast, but I'll save more of my introduction for later. I'm excited to be here with my good friend and partner in this presentation today, and really technology partner, Greg Wasserman, who is joining us out of LA. Greg, say hello to everybody.
Hey, you guys, thanks for joining. I'm excited understanding the backstory of what everyone's doing here, but also having a fun conversation about content and AI.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. So we like small workshops. We host these workshops generally about 3 times per month, and we change the topics up just to make sure we can be an educational resource to marketers, to business owners, entrepreneurs who are really trying to navigate their path forward. Today, we're going to talk about really, I would say, not just content for content's sake, but how do we gain the additional leverage that now the beautiful world of AI has presented us. Because if we're marketing on Google, if we're marketing on social media, if we're writing blogs, if we're writing emails, if we're running ads, content is, they say content is king, but at the end of the day, getting content done properly for your buyer's journey is the key. So with that being said, we're going to run, just so you get a little bit of an idea, we're going to run till right about 1 o'clock PST. We will have some time for Q&A at the end, but if you do have a question, just feel free to unmute, get our attention. We have no problem with that at all. I'm going to turn the stage over to Greg Wasserman. Take it away.
Hey, thanks a lot, you guys. Yeah, so run through this. I definitely do not want to talk for an hour, so this is interactive, but ultimately, today, and the reason you're here is talking about how to 10x your content, how to use AI effectively, and then look at some tools that could probably help you in that way. So as Darrell kind of already did, but I'll introduce myself. So my background's in media. I was in the media space working with agencies, brands, and companies for almost 20 years, transitioned to partnerships, and then slowly into the podcast space. And that's kind of where this took me today, because the thing I always saw with podcasters is they were always focused on just downloads, downloads. I'm like, oh, you've got so much rich content that's coming from this. You should be plastering it into all these other places, because I'm never going to listen to your podcast, or I can't listen to them all, but I can engage with you. So how do you find ways that you can take that content and be able to engage with your audience? And then the joys of, at least the three of you that originally introduced yourself, different businesses. I find myself as a jack of all trades, and I value incredible connections, which is why I also love Darrell, because it's like, all right, mindset, like that is speaking my jive. So speaking of that, I'll turn it over to you, Darrell.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate that again. Not to repeat myself, but I personally have been in digital marketing. I started my digital marketing journey in 2003. I started my entrepreneurial career when I was 20 years old. This year I'll be 54. So this is my 34th year as an entrepreneur. So pray for me that I can continue. Uh, but I have been fascinated with digital marketing since I used to own a mortgage company, and I was in the real estate and lending industry for a good chunk of years. And for the last 13 years now, my former co-founder and I, we have been just helping small and mid-sized companies grow, utilizing the power of the internet and social media, and just keeping up with where consumers are today. Small and mid-sized companies are our passion. Generally speaking, not as funded, not as big a team. Most of our company team sizes are, they don't have a marketer to maybe 3 marketers on their team. So we come in and become their outsourced digital marketing partner, and we take care of everything that you can think of under the sun. So that being said, I'll keep that brief. And Greg, back to you. Let's dive in.
All right. So I always like to start this like the presentation is how to 10x your content using AI. So let's start with who is the OG in content when we think about content. I always start with Gary Vaynerchuk because he's prolific. He's everywhere. I'm guessing even Mukat, in Turkey, you've heard of Gary Vee because he's everywhere. But he started somewhere, and he started understanding the value of content. And if you keep putting out and filming himself, or finding different ways that he could just put his content out there, and that's why everyone knows him now. He figured out record once, put it out into all these different mediums, and just continue to iterate from there. So if we think about it, and he also talks about the value of content repurposing, how to build your brand, how to get your brand out there, and think of those components. So when I think about that, I go to the next piece. I'm not Gary Vee, and I don't have 20 hours in a day. I don't have a team. So why do I care about what Gary Vee has to say? And that's actually how I feel as well. Like, it's overwhelming. How do I actually do all these things that he's telling me? Because I'm not him. You've got like resource limitations. Like I said, there's not 28 hours in a day. How do I maintain the quality of the content? So as I put out more, then how do I make sure that it's actually quality? How do I diversify it? Like, how do I put a blog, a newsletter, a video, podcast, like all these components? That becomes a lot. Audience engagement. So if I put on Twitter, if I put on LinkedIn, if I put on Instagram, that means I've got to communicate with everyone. That's just overwhelming in itself. And then repurposing, like, how do I do that for each one of those platforms? And then as my team grows, how do I make sure I'm managing my team and everything else? Like, it's a lot, right? So I'm not Gary Vee. It's overwhelming. Most then aren't doing it. But if we also then think of how do we think of AI and what is our role that AI plays, because AI can be incredibly helpful in this, but you have to think about how does AI actually fit into your workspace. At the end of the day, the biggest piece here is you. No one can replicate you. You can't replicate, you could replicate your voice, you could replicate your image, but at the end of the day, what you say, what you think, you can't replicate that. And so the whole point is when you think about how do I use AI, whether I'm using ChatGPT to come up with ideas or I'm using some other AI tool, the biggest piece is your voice, your content is your brand, and you can't outsource your brand. So when you start thinking of how I'm using AI, keep that in mind. What is authentic to me? What sounds authentic and feels authentic? So the next piece I'd like to go into is great. I'm not Gary Vee. I'm overwhelmed here, but I understand that there's value in using AI. So what is the actual value and how do I 10x it using AI? What can I do with it? First one is volume. So if you think about it, the more I'm consistently posting and regularly engaging with my audience, the more they'll be likely to see it. My background's in the podcast space. So if you think about podcasts coming out every Monday or every Tuesday, whatever the day of the week is, your audience gets used to it. When your audience is like, hold on, why isn't this new show coming out? There's that fear factor on them. They're like, what did I miss? And so forth. So if you're consistently posting it, you're building that audience and they're getting used to it. You're also flexing a muscle. Consistently posting, you're like, oh, this isn't that hard once you've started doing it. Then increases your visibility. So you can now get more content, means you're more times that you can be seen. Well, if you can be seen more, that establishes your authority more. Also allows you to increase your diversity of offering. So if I can go ahead and say, here is a specific audience, and if we go back to the case, like menopausal women that one of you is working in, right? So I could have that as my niche audience, but there could be different ways that you're speaking. Each person in the menopausal community could be wanting to be spoken to in a certain way. So how do you personalize that? And you can do that all through AI. The more content you put out, the more volume you're putting out, also gives you more data. And when you've got more data, that gives you more insights. And so the insights now allow you to understand where the preferences are. What can I do to customize this content? I always like to look at it as I live on LinkedIn. It's where my content is. It's where my voice and authority is. If you wanted me to write a LinkedIn post every day, it's a lot of work. But if I could record one piece of content and then have that written 5 different ways so that it's engaging with a different audience or a message, same message, just tweaked slightly. Now I'm able to engage and find out what did my audience like? What resonated? How many touch points did it actually take? So I can go ahead and use AI to increase the volume, get more data and insights, and then of course, start refining that because now I can customize the 5 LinkedIn posts that I've got and truly have it speaking to each person. Now I don't have to write 5 different posts. I can just take that one piece of content, my thoughts, my voice, whatever the case may be, and then increase the personalization, the volume, getting all that data. And at the end of the day, why do we want to do this? Increased engagement. So the more content, more volume, more data means you're increasing your engagement. You personalize the content so it resonates more with that audience, which builds relationships. We are currently in the space where relationships is key. So if content is king, relationships are key. Trust is the new currency. And so how do I build that trust? I feel like you're speaking to me. I can feel like this connects with me. And the more you're putting content out there, the more you can connect with that audience, which of course then leads to retention, loyalty. Personalized makes it feel more special, as opposed to like, oh, I can feel that this is written with ChatGPT. This isn't authentic. This isn't you. And so then it allows you to start standing out of the crowd. We think about where we're all going. Like AA is not going anywhere. Darrell and I were talking offline, and I didn't hear this, but I thought it was incredibly interesting that the AI revolution is what is it? The next thing to electricity, I think is what you said,
Yeah,
which is
definitely.
incredible, right? Was
Yeah,
electricity? Yeah.
Seth Godin, for those that are in the room who know Seth Godin or heard of Seth Godin, he's the author of, I think, 24 books, 21 of which in the bestseller list. He's considered one of uh, the godfathers, if you will, one of the masters of modern marketing. And he said on a podcast just recently that AI is the best technological invention, or the most advanced and most significant technological invention since electricity. And that's not us, because if Greg and I said it, it would be hyperbole, because we're because we're not that famous. But if a guy like that, who probably doesn't make statements like that very haphazardly, says that on an open podcast, we know we're in the right place at the right time.
Truth. And so if I can now leverage an AI tool to repurpose, I can have automation will streamline repetitive tasks like scheduling, content distribution, consistently and reliably posting all of that stuff. So there's a way to do this. And this is where I go back to Gary Vee. It's like, all right, this is how he's done it. This is exactly what he's been successful at, why we know who he is. I don't have a team. Great. Then how do I use technology that probably Gary Vee and his team are using so I can do these things? So let's go into a case study, because those always help. So let's take Gary Vee, the pinnacle, and let's take these average Joes. So we've got Blaine and Ramon here. They have a podcast called DTC Pod. They ultimately were like, we're running VC-backed companies. We're doing a podcast. I don't have the time to do all the things that I would need to do to promote this podcast and get distribution, get listeners, grow my show. So they built a tool using AI to help them do that, to automate a lot of these things. Because they then used AI to help them automate things, they then started building their newsletter list. Great, I can take my podcast episode, throw it in an AI tool like Castmagic, and now I've got a newsletter based on each episode. I then have social posts. Well, because they were doing this volume of content and catering to people, it hit my road, my view, and I then every Monday post 3 podcasts I think people should listen to on my LinkedIn. I did their show. This was December of 2022. In February of 2023, they reached out to me and they're like, hey, we built this tool that we think you would find enjoyable and useful because you're in the podcast space. Showed me this tool. I'm like, yes, this is what I've been trying to get podcasters to do. Think beyond a download and start thinking about how do I become a brand and ultimately leverage all my thoughts, all my content, and be able to distribute that so that might reach my audience in the way they want to. So goes to show, putting out volume of content, being able to automate things allowed them to not only grow their show, but reach a new audience like myself, which connected us. And ultimately opened them up for monetization opportunities because they were growing so fast. They ended up joining the HubSpot network. So it played the long game. They put the volume of content out there, and then they used tools to automate that. Another case study I love to throw in here is Mikey Taylor. So this, what I'll show you is a video. And so Mikey was originally a pro skater, and he figured out the value of putting out content and how he bulk does his content. So I'll let Mikey actually talk to it, and then we'll come back and kind of explain more.
So I'm like, Mikey now has an audience like 10x, if not more, the size of when like I used to DM him. I DM you, you responded, you're active on X, on Instagram, on TikTok. You even have a text group in community. And so like not every day feels like, oh, today is a great day to make content. When you're that consistent, you probably make content every single day. And so I just want to hear more about like, what is your content workflow like? How do you become a content machine like that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, and remind me to talk to you about this because I would love to get your perspective on this as well, because there's something that I'm mentally working through also. So basically, my flow of content or how I go about it, Mondays are, I am dark. I come into the office and my assistant knows there is zero scheduling me on Mondays. No one can get a hold of me. I am locked in the office or wherever I'm going to be working. And that day is meant for basically concepts and copy. So on Monday, what I attempt to do is come up with 10 to 12 different concepts and then write them out so I have all the copy. Tuesday is a full-blown work day for me. It's meetings, it's, if we're looking at deals, that's going to be the actual business. It's going to be Tuesday. Wednesday, I am filming all day. So that is start to finish, I'm in front of the camera. And then Thursday, Friday are normal business activities, raising money, working on concepts we're doing, more of a traditional approach to business. And that allows me to basically have content that comes out daily, where Monday through Sunday, I can be.
I love listening to Mikey because you put Mikey, you put the DTC Pod, you put then Gary Vaynerchuk in there. It gives you an idea of like, how are people doing this? And maybe that's not the way I would do it, but it gives you an understanding of what's being done. So how do you actually do this? And how are they doing this consistently? So we can look at a tool here. Literally what they're doing is they're taking their long form content. Like he said, he's recording all day Wednesday, taking that long form content, and then he's putting it in a tool like Castmagic that's then going to cut it, splice it, put it into all the different formats that he would need using AI. Now all he has to do is customize those components and distribute. It's a rinse and repeat kind of model. So let's actually go look and see what this looks like. And I can show you both multiple different ways, especially since I understand at least three of you where your business standpoint is, and then turn it over to Darrell, who'll give you how he's using this as well. So this is Castmagic. What I said is Castmagic originally started as a platform for podcasting. That's where DTC Pod came from. So I could load a podcast in here. Out of the box, I'm going to get these 13 things. Easy, done. I take an audio recording and I've got now a title, keywords, questions, pulls out quotes, pulls out and writes my LinkedIn post, my newsletter, threads, my Instagram. If we go back to the don't over automate, it is my brand, my voice, my content. And now I'm just figuring out how do I put it into the formats of a Twitter thread, a LinkedIn post without having to do that and then go from there. But you're multifaceted. So I can take my meetings and I can put them in a meeting profile. And now I'm going to get the agenda. If you're like me, you're like, I said something smart. Or actually, I probably didn't say something smart. You probably said something smart. I'm like, ooh, that's a good one. Who wrote that down? Well, if you record your conversations, you record your meetings, whether it's Zoom, whether it's on some other app, and you bring them in here, great. Now you're going to get all these action items. You're going to get agenda points, recordings, but also how do you take that? And I always think about content repurposing in a couple ways. There's a content repurposing of how do I turn this into a LinkedIn post, a blog, a newsletter, something that I'm promoting, or how do I repurpose it? So it's like, great, it gave me the action items. It gave me quotes. It gave me thoughts that I didn't even think about. And then how do I start extracting insights from there? I can take my sales calls and then my discovery calls, and you're going to get all these different components out of it that are already going to build you. So imagine going in there and going like, hey, you're, I'll use the example of the furniture retailers. Like, all right, let's talk about who are our competitors. How do we position ourselves? If we think every furniture store is different, it's like, no, we sell ourselves on customer service and pricing. It's like, you probably do more. So how could you actually go ahead and understand your competitors, but also understand your business, things that you're probably not even thinking about? And then courses and webinars is another piece. How do I start expanding my business and growing? I'll show you one thing I do is I take a podcast episode, I have a prompt, I turn into a course, I create that course in Canva or PowerPoint, and then I bring that filmed course into here, and it's going to give me a worksheet, lead magnet. Once again, all these things, I'm working smarter, not harder. So if we think about it, I've got the ability to have multiple spaces. You can see I've got one for my podcast, one for my coaching calls, because I'll show you how I do that. I've take brain dumps for my thoughts with my iOS recordings, got my workshops. So you've got the ability to have all these different spaces. You can have all these different components of content that you can kind of work with. If we go look at how do I get content in here, this is the joy. If you're like me, Greg, I don't film. I'm not a content person. I'm like, fine, let's go take inspiration from other places. I consume a lot of podcasts. I guest on people's podcasts, or I listen to them and I'm like, this is good information. How do I leverage that? So you can go ahead and can paste a YouTube link, a Vimeo link, a Reel, a TikTok, other people's content. If you're like, I don't film, bring in other people's and let's, how do we repurpose that? And I'll show you some of that. Or you can drag and drop and bring it directly from your computer. We have a Zapier integration. I don't use that, so I record this Zoom call and then I upload it directly in there and then I use that to repurpose. Or if I guest on people's podcasts, I have a podcast, or I'm like, ooh, I listen to this podcast. How do I could use this? So going back to menopausal women, there's so many podcasts out there about menopausal women. Maybe I'm like, all right, I like these 3 episodes that I listen to on this space because I'm not in the podcast space, but I love what they have to say. I can bring those in here and then use that content to help fuel my own content pieces. Or, as I said, we have an iOS app. So I will literally record my thoughts. Here's an example. I had a conversation with someone. They never heard about breaking the fourth wall. So I recorded a conversation with myself in the app going like, all right, like, how do I describe the fourth wall? Why should podcasters be doing that? And then it turned this into all this content that I was able to leverage just based on a 2-minute conversation I had with myself. There's so many different ways you can leverage that. So let's actually take a look at what this does. So if I've got a podcast, everything starts with a transcription. From there, from a podcast, it gave me 10 different titles. It gave me my SEO keywords. Someone mentioned using SEMrush. Great. So here's a bunch of SEO keywords that can go to SEMrush and go like, great, give me some more insights. Speaker bios and intro. Give me my timestamp overviews, chapters, topics and bullet points. Pulled out quotes. I'm like, all right, we are literally releasing later today an ability to turn this quote into a quote card. I can build all my Instagram reel, my LinkedIn post, my newsletter, my tweet thread, threads by Instagram. This was literally all based on that recording. And that's where we go back to the disclaimer of don't over automate, because these are my words. These are my thoughts. It's just now organized into a way that I probably wouldn't have been able to write this tweet thread, but I could say this. So let me go ahead and say this or take it into that. And then this is all editable. And then you've got the ability to start using like a ChatGPT function and automate more. So here's the course creation. I literally take a podcast episode, put it in here, gives me the framework for a course, and now I can go build out that course. Create a custom newsletter. If you have a format of a newsletter, let me take my words and build that into a newsletter that I've got. I found this lady's LinkedIn post. I'm like, I could never write like this, but I can say these things and I want my content to look like this. So I took her format, built it for myself, and now I'm able to post. So I've got 6 different LinkedIn posts, all just based on this one recording. If we take a look at coaching calls. So if you're doing coaching, if you have meetings, what I love about this is it's going to create session themes, pull out the quotes from it, created a worksheet. Imagine trying to do a worksheet for your clients. Imagine trying to do a follow-up email. It's already going to written for you. Goals and objectives. And then I turned my coaching call into LinkedIn post because why wouldn't I want to be able to do something different with that? Turn it into another LinkedIn post. Now I can go ahead and use this share link, copy, and now a user, I can start taking my coaching calls, go, hey, you hired me for this, then great. Or internal meetings, going like, all right, you guys, everyone, I recorded the meeting. Here's the meeting notes. Here's what you want to listen to. And then here's any content that you may want to provide them. And if anyone wants to go ahead, you can use Magic Chat, which is like ChatGPT, start extracting more insights from there. If we look at, I already showed you iOS recording, so I can just do brain dumps and start putting content in here from my thoughts. Recording your meetings, recording if you go to a workshop, if you go to a seminar, if you're doing a webinar, how do I bring that content in? Caprice, I often don't create articles or blog posts from a panel webinar. Is that possible? Yes. So Caprice, like I can go ahead and literally, all right, so you said webinar. So let's go to course notes, let's go to events. So this is the event profile. Or sorry, I don't want events, courses, right? Yeah. So here's the course profile. Creates a transcription, and then the AI content gave me a summary of it, session themes, conceptual takeaways, timestamps, quotes, topics and bullet points, worksheet, quiz, social media post, lesson memo, lead magnet, Darrell will talk to that. And then there's anything else I may want to extract from this. I come here to Magic Chat and I can start extracting more. So if you want to create a blog post, create articles, create any kind of information you want to extract, like in this case, write me a LinkedIn post, you can start using like the ChatGPT functionality in here to extract that knowledge from it. And then also, Caprice, from your point, articles. So there's this function called Pages. And Pages allows me to take up to 5 recordings. And so these are coaching calls. So this is going to be cool. So we all coach, we all do meetings. So I took coaching calls and I can go, hey, write me an article based on these, or standard output. I'll show you the kind of information you can do there. So I literally took 5 coaching calls and I'm like, you're a course creator. Recordings contain discussions about podcasting. Write me a concept of a course. And now I've got an 8-module built out course that I can go ahead and go like, all right, let me expand on this. I'm repurposing, going back to my point of repurposing. Repurposing has so many different connotations. In this regard, how do I take coaching calls and turn this into a course? If I go and create an email, I want more clients. So in this case, I took 5 coaching calls. You know what I'm coaching? And I'm like, help me write a 3-email sequence to go get more clients. And there's a 3-email sequence. Once again, based on my words, my thoughts. And the last one I'll show you on this one is cool. Let's write an article. So you mentioned SEM Rush. I'm taking 5 coaching calls and I'm like, you're a professional writer. Write me a detailed article. And here you go. I got this 2,000, 3,000 word article based on my words, my thoughts, and other components. I can't remember. I think, Jonathan, you're in the insurance game. I've got insurance, financial, and real estate people I talk to all the time. They're like, all right, I'm always talking to different people, so I've got thoughts. I'm consuming, whether it's a real estate market videos, right, financial videos, whatever the case may be. You can bring that content in here, your own thoughts, as well as those other pieces, and have this write you a blog, newsletter, article, LinkedIn post, all your marketing materials that you may want in that regards. Another cool thing is, if you think about Gary Vee and Mikey, they're recording once and they're slicing this up. So I can go ahead and take this recording, highlight it, and then click the clip media. And this is going to download that specific piece into my computer, whether it's MP3 or MP4, video or audio, depending on what it is. And now I've got all these little cut up pieces of repurposing this as long form original content that I've got. Looks like pricing is based on minutes. How much time based on your examples are you using on average? Great question. So the way it works is minutes based. And so if you start at a 300 minutes a month, then, and you upload, or here, let's do a real example. So I've got this, I recorded myself for 2 minutes. That's 2 minutes against my 300 minutes for the plan that I've got. So I now have, out of a 2-minute recording, any kind of content that I may want to try and figure out to extract. Think about how much content I've literally written here, and I could do more. I've got maybe 20, maybe 23 prompts in here that I've saved to automate. I know people that have 50 plus as they figured out all these different ways that they may want. And I'll let Darrell, because he's probably got far more as a marketer himself, being able to do that. But hopefully that answers your question. That gives you an overview. But the last thing I'll call out is you're not alone. So if we go back to Gary Vee as the example, he's got a team. Well, this becomes your team. This becomes your content engine. This becomes your media agency in some regard. But also, we've got 1,300 people in our Slack community. We are building this with you in mind because we're users, you're users, so it's great. You're welcome, Janine. And so we've got weekly trainings, we've got tools, we've got all these access to different pieces to help you get started. The whole thing is you've got to take action to create change. And so now you can at least understand at the end of the day, how do I take a long form, whether it's my thought for 2 minutes, whether it's someone else's piece of content, load it in here and get all these different pieces of content that can become from it.
Yeah, Greg, thank you for that. And by all, please, at this point, unmute your mic if you have any questions. I'd love for you to ask any questions right now openly on mic and let Greg address those about what he's talked about. And what I'd like to do in a few minutes is just take a little bit of time to share with you, like just by putting a 1 in the chat, how many people here identify as a content creator? If you are, put a 1 in the chat. If you wake up and you have a podcast, you are already running and building a YouTube channel, you are a course creator in some way, shape, or form, you already deem yourself a content creator, put a 1. However, if you're not, put a 2. If you're an entrepreneur like Jonathan, who's running a farmer's agency, if you're running a business as an entrepreneur and maybe you've seen Gary Vee, maybe you resonate with the DTC pod situation, maybe though you wake up in the morning and you're saying to yourself, I am not and don't want to be a content creator. Darrell, I don't want a podcast. Darrell, I like YouTube, but I don't want to start a YouTube channel. Hey, Darrell, guess what? I'm not trying to go viral, but I do want to grow my brand. I want to increase my brand's visibility. I want to acquire more leads and customers, but I need a better workflow for it all. If that's you, put a 2 in the chat. Let me see what we got. We got some 1s. Jen's a 1. Jean, I think, is the iPhone. She's a 1. Caprice is a 1. Great. Greg, you're on my side. Greg is a 2. Kim's a 2. Jonathan's a 2. Great. So we got about a 50-50 room. If it's okay with you.
I don't wake up thinking I'm going to create content, but I got thoughts and I'm like, great. How do I take those thoughts and build my brand? That's what I want to do.
Right. So what I want to share with you today is with about 5 or 10 minutes. Yokel Local largely works with small business owners, and we assist marketers, heads of marketing for companies who just don't have the time to do all of the front end content creation. We like to describe it as we like to work with the expert to help get their expertise out of their head and then take care of everything else. I myself have had a podcast now for 4.5 years, going on 5 years. And I will tell you, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and then I'll dive into it. We've got a raised hand. So I'll come right to you. Let me see what we have here on the chat.
Janine, I think.
Jeannie.
Yeah, Jean, sorry.
Oh, Jeannie. Okay, great.
Jeannie.
Yeah.
What's your question,
like
Jeannie?
I dream of. Yeah, my quick question is, when you're running a marketing department and you're outsourcing content, but you're quite a bit the editor, and now you have years of a library and you want to go back and start repurposing it, etc. You just mentioned that Yokel Local works mostly with SMBs, but I want to hear more clearly about how you work with heads of marketing and helping with, lead magnets, or even taking competitor information, because they have like a general counsel, but you don't. And so you need to have expertise, but still be authentic, etc. So that's my question.
Oh, it's such a great question. And I'll come back to that if I can just cover sort of our workflow, and I will bring a realistic scenario for you, Jeannie, because what you're describing as a head of marketing, we're obviously the head of marketing for companies. So when we work with SMBs, we're generally the marketing department. When we're working with heads of marketing, creative marketing directors, CMOs, anywhere in between, and specifically, we work with doctors, we work with lawyers. And I want to show you an example of how do we do this for an attorney, where our team is responsible for creating all the content. I'll show you that because that's the one case study that I think is relevant and germane. If it's not, let me know, and we can certainly come back to that question. Jen, I think I saw your hand up as well. You want to jump in?
No, I didn't have a question.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I thought I saw you. Okay. So, we all know that content, I'm not going to repeat anything Greg said, but here are 4 steps that we provide. And one of the things that we talk about with, so our agency specializes with not just content, but content for the search engines, for ads, for social media, for email. Those are the large predominant areas. We are not a PR or branding agency. We're not writing press releases. We're not writing news releases. We're not preparing scripts for, for television appearances and things of that nature. Our customers come to us for just a couple of things: brand awareness, lead generation, and conversion. All of that shows up either on search or social. But here's one of the things that's interesting. In fact, I'll just go out and show you an example. So how does a company like Yokel Local, over 13 years, how do we write content for an expert like Sarah Ocampo, who's an attorney here in Las Vegas, one of many that we've worked with? I just pulled her up because more recently, I remember the conversation with her, and she was like, Darrell, I'm in this attorney's mastermind, and I'm creating content because they told me I have to, but I hate it. And she said, and you could feel it in her videos. Like, she didn't want to do it, but they sold her on the fact that it had to be done. Well, what's interesting is we brought the process in where we decided to take all of the burden off the expert, as we call it. And what you'll see in her stream here, these are all just the short videos. But what we've done is, what we do is sit down with our client every single month, generally once or twice a month. And the interesting thing is we do the exact opposite of what a content creator would do. We act as the curator of all of the most important frequently asked questions, the blog topics. We do all of the same keyword research we would if we were going to write the blog ourselves. But what we do is then we get the expertise out of her head about how she would say it. Let me tell you how we stumbled on this. We stumbled on this a number of years ago with a dentist out of Iowa, and our head of content, our content team, they were writing content, but we kept hearing back from him that he would say, Darrell, literally, it's technically right, but it isn't actually how it works in the real world. So we had this conflict between a writer who was very advanced at what they do. They know how to research, they know how to structure. It was written well, but it wasn't exactly how he would say it. It got to a point where he was with us, by the way, and he's a great friend of our agency's. He was with us for about 4 years, but at about year 2, he was like, Darrell, why don't I just, because he was a speaker, he used to run seminars. He was like, Darrell, why don't I just take over the blogs? And, so we made an adjustment in his contract, but I remembered the words. He kept feeling like he had to keep going in. So then we said, why don't we just flip it upside down? Why don't we interview them and then just reverse engineer against the keywords that we want to write, the ads that we need to promote, the topics and the pain points that the buyers would have along the buyer's journey. And so in Sarah's example, that's exactly what you can see here. We have videos that she would have ordinarily not wanted to shoot herself. We sit down with her once per month, and all we do is ask her the questions that we find that people are searching for on Google, that people have already told us about when they searched for her Google ads or when they found her Google ads. And all we do is ask her these short, quick questions, and she's able to just be an attorney in the moment and not be a content creator. And you can see, by the way, none of these videos are promoted. These, maybe one of them is promoted, but none of these are promoted. These are organic views. And of course, from here, not just from an SEO standpoint on Google, but YouTube is owned by Google. They're SEO'd properly because we asked these questions based on keywords we would have written content for in the first place. And for the sake of time, if we went over to her blog, we also used Castmagic to turn these video transcripts into blog posts for her blog. So we killed not just 2 birds with one stone, we killed multiple birds, because now we've got short video content because we interviewed her. We've got video content for YouTube, for Instagram, for TikTok, for Facebook. She doesn't post on LinkedIn, but technically these could go on LinkedIn. We also then have data for her newsletter, or content for her newsletter, which she publishes only once a month. So she's got content for her newsletter for years. And we have now taken care of the SEO work on her website. And we've taken care of advertising because we use these short clips for advertising on Facebook. And so it's all about efficiency. And for those here in the group who want to save money, I can tell you as an agency owner whose top line item in the agency at multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars a year is around content prior to ChatGPT and a tool like Castmagic. We have saved, I'm almost embarrassed to say, like, we have saved multiple 6 figures in costs, because And by the way, it isn't because we got rid of people. It's because we got rid of mundane tasks that we were having people do, right? So now we have tools do what people, so we can free the people up to do the bigger thinking. So that's kind of a back end. I'm going to start from the back side of it and work backwards. But our process is simple. We really prepare. We understand the brand. We understand the mission. We understand the purpose. We understand your message. We understand your expertise. But it really all starts with understanding keyword research. Our process, most of our clients don't want a podcast. Matter of fact, none of them have a podcast. I remember an insurance agent who works in an industry that only works in like the top 1% of income earners. They sell luxury insurance to people that have $4 and $5 million homes, and they have all sorts of high-end toys and yachts and stuff like that. And he was like, Darrell, we're losing our reach in the market because they're an old school B2B, belly to belly, handshake to handshake, face to face. And in the world of Zoom and in the world of pandemic, they were stuck. And this is a big old company. If I told you the name, you'd know it. But anyway, we really get down to what's the problem and we find out what those questions are. The next thing we do, of course, is we get into a production process, but that production process isn't what you would think. It's literally sitting down in front of a camera and in front of a Zoom. Actually, we don't use Zoom. We use a very high-end production studio, virtual. And then we just go through the recording process. We just interview and let our clients talk. Jeannie, you asked about lead magnets. I'll come back to that and talk about Ocampo and how we've done that for her, because literally every one of these questions can be bundled into a lead magnet. When you think about some of the questions that your most high priority clients are going to ask you, we can take the very content that we have from these videos, from these interviews, and reverse engineer those back into to lead magnets. So we just take a production process. Again, most of the time we're sitting down for about an hour. Of that time period, we're generally recording for 30 to 45 minutes. The person is able to just sit there, answer questions they would have normally known the answers to, because most of these questions are questions they've been answering 1,000 times. Then we're going into our publishing phase. Well, guess what? Our client is done. Our client's in for an hour and they're done. It's just it. You just sit down in the chair, you answer some questions, and they go back to doing what they do. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're fitness owners. They just don't want to do the content. So we take care of all that for them. We take care of all the back end, the SEO and all that stuff. I won't bore you with all that. And then, of course, as with anything, content doesn't promote itself. Good SEO content takes time. Even if you record great SEO content today and your site's really well optimized, you're not going to see the value of that content for 6 months, 12 months. So it's super important where most people shoot all this content and then you just throw it up there. If it's not well optimized, it's just not going to promote itself. So we always have a promotion plan behind all of our content. And with that being said, I don't want to go too far backwards. But if I use my podcast as an example, this is like our big podcast SOP. And I'm just going to scroll through it just to see how big it is. It was almost all done by humans prior to tools like Castmagic just a year ago. Now, today, it's not. It's done by what you saw Greg doing. So here's my old podcast. And every episode gets inserted in here. And again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go back through and show you all of the intricacies because you've already seen on Greg's screen how a lot of those show up. But we're using it the same way. We use it with client meetings. We use it with sales discovery calls. I do the same thing. I happen to do a lot of recording in my car. So I have a phone. I have one that says audio only. Then I have one that's just iOS. And I use the app for that. There are all sorts of use cases, meetings. We call our product Expert Cast, which is where we're interviewing our clients. So that's our internal product name. It's called Expert Cast, where we basically have our clients who's the expert sit down, we interview them, and then we build a casting process for them. Our process and our belief for us is to take all the burden off of our clients who are the business owners, entrepreneurs, CEO, founders. And then, Jeannie, to your question, it's partnering with folks like yourself who are the heads of marketing who just literally have too much on your plate and figuring out how do we assist in that regard. So generally speaking, that's how we do it. And of course, different clients have different needs, but we do have a kind of a process that we work through. So content for the most part for different brands take different shapes. And I think the way we think about content is, and this is the issue with AI, a lot of people are really upset about it. And I remember when I first made the announcement in our agency that everyone needed to get serious about AI because we had had AI for about 3 or 4 years. And ironically, here, just really quick, I read this book in 2018 on a plane. It's when machines do everything, how to get ahead in a world of algorithms, bots, and big data. I posted on social media about this book in 2018. I didn't dive in, but I heard it was coming, if that makes sense. Then comes along tools like Jasper, I think it was mentioned earlier. Then comes along other AI introductions. For that matter, look, we all been talking to AI, right? We've been talking to Siri and Alexa for quite some time. So now all of a sudden the world is upside down because ChatGPT is quote unquote taking jobs. And I say this, no. ChatGPT isn't taking your job. AI isn't taking your job. Someone who's an expert at time efficiency and using AI as a tool will in fact take your job. And that was a declaration I made in my agency. And a lot of people got up in arms about it, but I actually have been known for my ability to pivot. I've had 6 businesses, 3 didn't go well. That means they failed. so when they fail, you got to get up and pick yourself up and keep moving. So I'm built different. I'm built for change. I'm built for adaptation. I'm just wired that way. Maybe it comes from my days playing sports. Maybe it's tied to my entrepreneurship days. There's a few other reasons it could be tied to, but let me tell you who's never lost. Technology has never lost in evolution, not once. So whether it's this or something else, technology doesn't lose. It's getting better, it's getting faster. And so the best thing is for all of us to figure out, how do we get time efficient with it? How do we build a use case for it in our particular case?
Since I gave an overview and you showed us your workflow, is there anything in Castmagic that you'd be willing to show people of like, hey, this is literally the output I've...
Yeah, let's talk about, we run about 3 free workshops a month, just like we are doing right now. Same thing you've already seen. So here was one of our workshops. We call it 5 quick win digital strategies to help you grow your traffic, leads, and sales in 30 days. I know that's not what it says here, but that's the title. And the purpose of that webinar is to show people who are having some challenges, some very quick win strategies that we use in our agency almost with every client. And so same thing here. If I wanted to repurpose this, by the way, this webinar goes into our membership library for our paid clients. But same thing, if I really wanted to repurpose this out loud, I've got keywords, I've got the timestamp overview, session themes, session quotes. Quotes are very good, by the way. Let me explain quotes. We don't remember. Here was a quote that I said that I've said for a decade now, I think, and that is 50% of my marketing is not working. The problem is I don't know which 50% it is a quote from John Wanamaker. Now, I can't always remember what I said when I was in the meeting. Sometimes you get inspired by something and your Rolodex in your brain comes up with something, but then later you forgot what you said. So it's good to be able to go back and get these quotes and then repurpose those into other pieces of social media. So key topics, key bullets, again, to the point of worksheets for our academy students and for, should I say, our learning students who are learning from us, but they're doing their own work. This helps us go backwards with Nicole, by the way. Nicole Sayosa is on the call. She's in the chat. She's my executive assistant. This program wouldn't happen without her. So shout out to her. We're just able to then go backwards and start to put together summaries, analogies, follow-up emails. I'm going to share a couple of pieces of data just for everybody here. For context, when I first started online, we used to pay $1.25 per minute just to get a transcript. So if I do an hour-long webinar like today, it used to cost me $1.25 per minute. So if Greg and I finish this call and we just go back about 4 years, I would spend 60, let's just round it off and say it was $1 a minute. I'd spend $60 just getting the transcript. Next, I would have to pay someone to go take the transcript and then reverse engineer it into an article. And that would cost me $60 to about $160, depending on the quality of the writer and the editor. Next, I would have to pay an editor because the writer and the editor are not the same people. If you didn't know that, they're not the same person. So the cost would go up. Here's the short story. It would cost me on average, for a solid piece of content, anywhere from $150 to $250 just to get a piece of content out. That's from ideation, that's from creation, that's from editing, that's from publishing. I'm an agency. We got the entire workflow. We think about email marketing, right? If I want to go summarize today's workshop and get it out to my email list tomorrow, That's still a 20-minute exercise for even me who may have been a part of it. And I know the subject matter great. That's still a 20-minute exercise. You know what it is now? It's a 3-minute exercise because Nicole will take this recording, she'll upload it, and then I'll just come down here because it's reverse engineering what we already said. See, I'll take this custom newsletter, which we created the prompt for this, and I can edit this. I don't necessarily need to use it as you see it because I don't like to send out quite that long of an email, but I will now be done in literally 3 or 4 minutes versus 20. So when we put this webinar out and we put this conversation together, we were saying, this isn't 10xing the content, yes, but what does that do for you? Saves you time, saves you money, relieves your stress, takes away your overwhelm. I don't know if you need any of those 4 things, but that's, I don't know about y'all. That's just me. I don't know how y'all live. That's just me. So that being said, those are just some of the benefits. Listen, for all of you being here, I want to be respectful of your time. It's 1 o'clock. Greg, you've made you set up a situation for all of our guests today. And we've had questions about what the cost of it was, how many minutes, and this, that, and the other thing. Please tell everybody what they can take advantage of for being here.
By being here, by spending the time, look, there's no change without action. And so if you want to start your process of becoming Gary Vee, understanding where this goes, but all the things that we kind of showed you, and then the use cases at Darrell, like, go play, go start testing. There's a month free. We talked a kind of bit about the minutes, 300 minutes. So if I upload a 2-minute video or 2-minute thought, it's 2 minutes against my 300. You have to use this link and you have to use that promo code. The promo code expires next week, the 29th. So you'll have this recording, and Darrell's going to send this all out with those pieces as well. So anyone that's watching this, you'll see this at the end. But yeah, and then once again, you've got us as a resource. So Darrell is the resource. You've got the whole community here at Castmagic. But I really appreciate, hopefully this gets you thinking, how do I take that content? How do I do more? And how do I feel less overwhelmed and use AI to help me?
All right. All right. Well, we hope you got some great value out of today's conversation. We'll hope you get a chance to play with Castmagic. I want to thank Greg Wasserman, head of growth and partnerships at Castmagic. We've loved the tool. I stopped using. I played with a lot of them. We cut all the subscriptions for everything else. This is so key to what we do. So, Greg, thank you for taking the time to be here and sharing some time with our audience.
Hey, likewise. Thank you guys for giving me the platform to geek out on some of the things that I love talking about, because yeah, I'm not a creator, but I need to build my brand on LinkedIn. And so this has been the greatest thing for me. So yeah. All
right. We will have a replay out tomorrow, more than likely, with some follow-up resources. And feel free to reach out to us at the agency. If you get that email, just hit reply if you have any questions. Otherwise, we will see you again. Keep an eye on your email for our next upcoming workshops. And we've got a couple of really big ones coming up for you. So that being said, I'm Darrell Evans at Yoka Local and Mindshift, and we'll see you again next time. Have a great day.